People who were falsely accused of a serious crime. Was your life ruined? I was getting ready to jump in the shower when I heard a knock on the door. I had a pair of gym shorts on, so I went and answered it. To my amazement, there were a bunch of cops outside. They told me they had had a complaint of loud noise and possibly domestic violence. I just laughed and said, "No, that's not here, I live alone." The officers remained serious. One of them asked me if I had any ID on me so they could go about their business, and I said, "Sure." My wallet was on the wall right by the door, so I pulled my ID out and handed it to one of the officers. He looked at it and asked me if I could step outside again. I kind of chuckled and said, "Yeah, no problem." As soon as I stepped out of the door of my house, the other officer commanded, "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." I looked at him kind of funny, and I said, "What for?" Again, he told me to turn around. So I turned around, and I put my hands behind my back. Suddenly, I felt handcuffs, and they ordered me to sit down in front of the house. I asked one of the other officers what this was all about. He said, "There's a warrant out for my arrest." Now, mind you, I have never been in any kind of trouble at all in my life. And so again, I kind of chuckled. I said, "What kind of warrant?" The officer said he doesn't know because it was from out of state. Now I'm starting to get a little freaked out. So the officer leads me into the police car. All I have is my gym shorts and flip-flops and my cell phone. They stripped me of my phone immediately. About 45 minutes later, as we were driving to the holding cell, I asked the officer what this was all about. He said he really didn't know, but because the warrant is out of state, they have to take me to jail. He also said there's a no bond clause on this warrant, which means until I figure out what this is, I'm stuck there. I was put into a holding cell with about 15 gang members in Fort Lauderdale Broward County Jail. At about 11 that night, I was transferred to a holding jail, given a 2-inch mattress and a blanket, and was told to go to sleep on the floor. At this point, I've asked probably 4 or 5 officers what's going on, and nobody seems to know. I haven't seen an attorney, and I don't have any telephone numbers memorized. Stupid smartphones. So the next day, I asked an officer again, "What's going on, and how do I find out?" He comes back and simply says it's an out-of-state warrant, and I'll have to wait to see the judge. I said I want to access my cell phone so I can find some numbers and call somebody. Here's where it gets really bad. I haven't seen a judge for 8 days. I have to spend 8 days in jail not having any idea why, not seeing an attorney and having no access to call anyone. I finally see a judge on the 8th day and he tells me it's an out-of-state warrant, and again he doesn't know what it's for, and I have a choice. I can fight extradition or I can concede to extradition. If I fight, I'm going to probably be there for 60 days minimum and possibly be let out. If I concede, I could be there another 45 days before they take me to the other state. So I conceded and I asked him for the court order to access my phone. The judge says he's never heard of having to have a court order to access a cell phone, but reluctantly gives one. On the 9th day, when I ask to access my phone again, I'm told that they're not going to allow me to access my phone even though they have a court order because the phone battery is dead. Now I don't know what to do. This is the 9th day and it turns into the 10th and 11th and 12th, and so on. On the 23rd day, no one in the world knows where I am. I'm assuming my kids probably think I'm dead, as they live in another state. North Carolina shows up to extradite me on the 23rd day. During this 48-hour trip where I'm shackled hand and foot in the back of a van, I finally convinced one of the officers that is driving to access their Facebook account and message a close friend of mine to try to get in touch. They do that and of course my friend thinks it's a scam. Finally I gave him information that only I would know and he sent his phone number. On the 25th day in North Carolina I finally found out what the charge is. A former client of mine from 4 years prior in a business that I had had and signed over to another partner had accused me of taking $20,000 and fleeing the state. I laughed again. But not real hard this time because this was getting real. As I'm booked into their jail I'm trying to figure out what to do. The next day I finally saw an attorney. He doesn't have too much information for me but tells me what the charge entails and what the possibilities are for sentencing and things like that. A few days later he comes back with the evidence brought against me. As we went through it, I found nothing at all pointing to any kind of criminal activity for me, which of course I knew because I hadn't done anything. However, I did find a receipt from an unknown company that was in my former partner's handwriting and had his home address as the address for the unknown company. The amount received was $12,000. I told my attorney what I found and then was escorted back to my cell. Days and weeks go by. No news at all. The total amount of time I spent in this jail was 52 days. They demanded $25,000 in cash in order to release me or I was just stuck there. I had access to no money at all. However, I had finally called my buddy who had gotten in touch with my sister and they had let my kids know what was going on. On about the 40th day I woke up with some pain. Looks like I had caught an infection and it was in my right testicle. I had no way to contact a nurse except to put it on a message board requesting medical attention. There was no medical that day, and there was no medical the next day, even though I requested it again. A week later I finally saw a nurse, and told them the infection had spread to my ear. She gave me one antibiotic pill that day and told me I would get another the next day. On the 51st day, I saw my attorney and my attorney told me at this point the DA is not going to offer a plea bargain because the evidence against you doesn't make sense. However, there is a possibility that there will be a plea bargain offer, but it probably won't be for about 6 months. If at that point I plead not guilty, it may be another 6 months to a year before there is a trial. At this point, I just told my attorney that we need to speak to the DA. He says he doesn't have time to do that and I said no problem. Give me the name of the DA and the telephone number and I'll have my sister three-way with me and we'll call him ourselves. Something amazing happened at that point. The next morning my attorney arrived and told me I was getting out that day. The state released me on my signature with no money involved. So I left North Carolina on a Thursday evening and had to take a train back to South Florida. I got home Friday night. Fortunately, through this time, I've spoken to my landlord. Even though I had been evicted because she didn't know where I was, she let me stay. My car had been repoed, the companies that I have done business with had canceled contracts, and one had even charged me back almost $75,000. But at least I had a place to stay. So I began to regroup the next afternoon and I noticed that my eye was hurting. By that night I couldn't see from my right eye and it was in so much pain that I had to call an ambulance. Long story short, I ended up staying the night in the hospital with an infection that had gone into my eye behind my eye and was in the process of getting ready to attack my brain. I lost sight in my right eye that day. Ended up several months later having to have a cornea transplant. The transplant was a year and a half ago, and I still can't see very well out of the eye. Today is July 22nd, almost 2 years from the arrest and the case still hasn't been closed. I've been told over and over that they're going to dismiss the charges but they haven't done that as of yet.